If I told you that I studied in a school where I was free to learn in a way that I wanted to, and that I really enjoyed going to school every day, would you believe it? Or if I told you that I could learn amongst my peers and there was no pressure of performing well in the exams, would you believe it? I don't think so. Because for majority of us, our schools looked like this, as a place where we did not know why we were there in the first place. The motivation was low, and there was just so much pressure. This is the place where we spent more than 15 years of our life. Well, less if you convinced your teachers and parents to step up classes. But the challenge is that, why is it that a place where we spend so much time, we still do not relate very well to that? The data from Yale Center for Social Intelligence and Child Data Center suggests that more than 75% of the students reported negative feeling towards their school. And I'm sure that the data for India would not be much better. If you think deeper, the reason for that is today, learning is very much instructional in nature. Students are not really participating in their education, and we are just forced to accept the things that come to us. Whether it is via our teachers or via parents, most of the time, we are just receiving information. This is such an irony where we as students are passive participants in the learning system that was designed for us. And the challenge is even much bigger in rural and tribal areas, where the sense of aspiration and confidence for these students is really low. There are non-motorable roads, very less teachers who could inspire confidence in them. The situation looks bleak. Now, the theory of motivation says that for any person to stay motivated, three things are very, very important, fundamentally. There is a need for belonging, where I get a sense that I belong here, I have importance here. There is a sense of autonomy, that I am free to do things in a way that I would like to do. There is a freedom. And there is a need for competence, where my skills would be leveraged in a way that is age appropriate. What does it mean for any child studying in school? It means that they don't feel powerless about the situation that they are in. It means that they're empowered to make their own decisions. It means that they have a teacher and a peer support group that inspires them to do better and always pushes them hard. And we think that today is the time that we need to remodify education for the real purpose that it is, which is to develop purpose, ownership, and learnability in students. We don't need to give them everything, but we need to teach them, facilitate them on how to think and how to learn. Now, this is something that we call a sense of agency. Before we deep dive into what agency means and how it can be developed, let me take you back to the rural and tribal areas. So this is foothills of Satpura. There's a district called Chhindwara, which is so-called called the Switzerland of India in some sense. And this is one of the most backward districts of the country. And a lot of people say that when COVID hit, the place wasn't even affected because people did not really know what COVID is. And the thing was just as usual. The sense of confidence, aspiration, and exposure for these students is really, really low. The dropout rates are really high. Even the enrollment rates are very poor. But these pictures show us a very different perspective. You can see students here walking ahead, marching past to talk about their rights to education. They are sitting in line with the village panchayat, talking to their parents and negotiating about the issues that are important for their schooling. They're talking about why domestic violence in their houses are not really helping them do better. It affects their social and emotional health. They're talking about how the overuse of tobacco in early kids is really a disaster in making. The question for us to ask is, what is giving these kids a sense of purpose and confidence? We aren't thinking about these kids when they're looking at schools, right? They are just, these are kids who don't even have that much amount of confidence to answer about their names and so on. So what inspires them to walk in support with the village panchayat and their parents and negotiate about their rights to education? We believe that to think about this, we'll have to go back to the way that I did a lot of my learning in school. You see, I studied in a very affordable private school. It was so-called an English medium school, but for 6 to 8 months, I didn't have English teachers at all. So a lot of my learning happened via peer groups. We used to just come together, figure out a lot of things and explore. Gave us a lot of confidence in that process. Even my journey to IIT, I didn't even know about IITs as such. And there were just a couple of seniors who had cracked the JEE exam. And I just thought that if they could do that, I could do that too. And when I talked to them, it felt there was a sense of relatability there, right? Coming back to college, the reason I started my first company when I was just in second year of my college is because there was a friend of mine who had challenged me that this was possible. I didn't even know about entrepreneurship in the first place. But I could do that just because they challenged me, and I thought that I could really take up to that challenge. And today I had founded 2 companies altogether, right? So what I'm trying to get to is that these principles of freedom, the principles of purpose, and principles of right skill sets are really important in pushing us further to achieve what we want to do. And we believe that these are the same principles with which we founded our organization. Over the last 6 years, we have worked with more than 20,000 students in improving their skills, improving their ownership in schools. And we believe that the sense of community, the peer group that we are able to create in this learning process is really what gives them this sense of agency. Now, coming back to these kids, I believe that the process of collaboration, where they could actually actively participate in this whole process, reflect on their journey, and decide on what is important for them, really gave them that sense of purpose and confidence to actually take this whole campaign out. They realized that this was a problem that really they had to solve for it because this was really important to them. And there are numerous examples around. I want to take two more of them. In one of the schools that we were working with, there were a couple of students who were really struggling with multiplication. You see, in arithmetic, addition and subtraction is quite easy because you can visualize that. You take something and you give something back. That's how the thing works. But multiplication becomes a bit complicated. Now, they were not able to understand the same concept in schools. So a bunch of kids shared this whole challenge with the same classroom. And one of the girls stepped up and said, "Oh, I have a better way of understanding this. I would like to show it to you." So next day, she brought a lot of ice cream sticks. And she visualized them to look at multiplication as a process of repeat addition, which is what fundamentally it is. Now, for a 6th grade kid to be able to think about that is enormous. And I think the kind of confidence that it gave her when she was able to explain the concept rightly is beautiful. The second example that I have is one of a rural school where we used to run these peer group classes and there were senior students teaching their juniors. Now, in one of the days, there was this one student leader, we call the senior students as leaders. She had not come to school because she was sick. But during the last period of the school, when the peer group classes happened, she came to the school for just that 1 hour. And we just had a conversation with her. Like, I thought we were sick. Like, why did you come to school in the first place? And the answer was, if I didn't come to school today, how would my learners learn? And they would be falling behind. Now, I think it's very beautiful because we don't expect a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old to think like this, to take that much amount of responsibility and trust. We think these are the pictures from the same classrooms, and you can see some of those students in action. What we believe, if you look at all of these 3 stories that I talked about, certain things stand common. That students are able to relate to the problem. They see that there is a sense of belonging, that they have the power to influence change. There is autonomy, that we are not restricting them, exactly telling them what to do. They're free to make certain decisions on their own. There is guidance, there is facilitation, but there is a lot of autonomy in their hand. The third thing is that there is competence. We are trusting them that the problem at hand is something that they can influence. They have the right skill sets and the guidance to act. And we believe that if these are the 3 aspects that we are able to develop in students, we have a lot of wonders that we can see. So the question for us is, how do we see agency in action? And what we believe, we have seen that these are the 4 steps towards which we can see students having sense of agency. In a lot of places, the key things that are important is that these 4 actions, whether it is about setting goals or initiating action towards the goals, should be done consistently and in a conscious manner. If students are able to do that, we really believe that they will have a sense of agency. The next thing that I want to talk about is how do we take these concepts and bring them to schools? Because these are really places where we spend a lot of our time growing. We believe that if teachers are able to trust students to take certain decisions on their own, allow them to fail and learn from it, this would really create a wonderful space. If we are able to give them some responsibility and tell them that, oh, we trust you and that you have the right skill sets and guidance to do this, I think students would do really well. Even as parents, if they're able to tell them to explore certain aspects rather than just telling them exactly what is needed for their career, things would go well. Students will have a lot of empowerment when they have peer groups with whom they're able to work together. If they have right role models based on which they can actually aspire bigger. I remember a lot of things that I did in school were really just based on what my seniors were doing, and I was able to relate to that. Whether it was me, I was really scared of debating. I could not really think that I could come on the stage and like sort of talk, right? But when I saw a couple of my senior students, my own friends coming to the stage and doing this, I felt that this was possible. That sense of relatability in students' life is very, very important. And I think that if schools are able to become collaborative spaces rather than just instructional forums where we are there receiving knowledge, it could create that space of agency for students. These are some of the pictures where you see students in small collaborative spaces doing wonders with their kids, motivating them. In a lot of places, we have seen the fear of mathematics of students going away because there are certain peer groups who are able to tell them, make them believe that this is not that difficult. That's the kind of confidence that we need to give to students. The reason why this is important is because the impact of agency is not just limited to our school lives. There's a lot beyond that, and I think there is much more beyond that. If you look at the dropout rates for girls in schools, it becomes significantly higher as girls go into higher education and secondary schools. And the reason for that is very well known. Now, what happens when girls have this sense of agency? In some of the peer groups, when we have seen girl students taking charge of the learning, they're able to go back to their parents and negotiate with them on why attendance in school is very, very important, on why they should be not dropping out of the schools but continuing their education. This has helped a lot of girls in the communities reduce their child marriages. It has helped them become independent, and we believe that this could create a lot of possibilities for girl students. When high school students have agency, they're able to decide what is right for them, they're able to take responsibility. They're able to make career decisions that will really propel them to do something right rather than just listening from their parents and relatives on what is really good for them. Even if they fail, they're able to take responsibility for their actions and they're able to then restart again. The resistance, the grit and the perseverance is really, really high. And when the students from really vulnerable communities file self-expression and confidence, they're able to think about their dreams and really come outside of the box that we generally put them in. So, in all of these stories, generally, when we think about the sense of belonging, when we think about the sense of autonomy, and we think about the sense of competence, before I close this thought, I want to leave you with this one question. Think, how will you be able to cultivate a sense of purpose, of ownership, and of learnability in your own life journey and inspire others to do the same? Because if we're able to do that, we'll actually create a world where all of us will have agency. And that is an idea worth spreading. Thank you so much.